بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. For this session, we will start with the communication with the client in crisis. This is chapter 21 in your book. So, in this chapter, we will cover three objectives. The first one, we will define the crisis and related concept. Then, the second objective, we will identify and apply structured crisis intervention strategies in the care of client experiences crisis. And the third objective, we will discuss crisis management strategies in disaster and mass trauma situation. So, the term crisis, the term crisis is an Chinese represent crisis of one character of danger and another of opportunity. So crisis itself, it might be an opportunity to develop ourselves, how to overcome those type of bad effect in our health or in our community, and it might be also a danger that might endanger our life and threaten our life. So successfully working through crisis, it will strengthen the coping responses if we are dealing with the crisis in a proper way, and sense of self-efficiency, so you see that you are more efficient, raise the level of also functioning, and you will learn a new coping skill. So it will be might be an opportunity for getting a new skills and training. If in another way, this is if we are dealing with it in a successful way, but when we maladaptive, when we didn't adapt to the crisis, so maladaptive responses, it can result in acute or chronic psychological symptom and require a treatment. It might lead to psychological problems for the client, and it needs a treatment and it needs help. Crisis state. What is the crisis state? Crisis state, it is acute, normal human responses to severity of abnormal circumstances. So, when the circumstances is very severe, it is considered as a crisis. It might be individual, it might be to the community, it might be for a family. Type of crisis, there are many types of crises, and they are dividing the crisis to many kind and types. One of them, which is developmental crisis, that is the changes during our life. During our life, there are some milestone that it is some dramatic change will happen with them. Like in case of marriage. Marriage, it is a change, total change in her life. So pregnancy also, the first pregnancy, birth of a child, birth of the first child, also it is a new change, so it is a developmental. Retirement also, it might be also the time of graduation, the time of also getting the grade 12 or passing to pass the grade 12, because there are some other consequences which depend upon that event. The second type, which is situational crisis. Situational crisis, which is unexpected illness or injury, or rape, car accident, loss of home. So there are situational due to certain circumstances. The third one, which is adventurous crisis, which is planned. So it is unplanned, it is unusual, it is horrific, it is horrifying, and it is beyond our own control. Like natural disaster. The natural disaster like earthquake, so, or floods. It is unexpected. In case of earthquake, it will come suddenly. It might be horrifying according to the level of that earthquake. It might be destructive. So then we have the national disaster like terrorism, wars, crime, rape, murder. All are considered as a crisis. Other classification, there are other classification type of classification of crisis. One of them which is private crisis. Private crisis which affect here individual or a family, but not the community. Because of that, it is called a private crisis. So it affects the individual or a families, but not in a community at a large, such as in case of suicide or terminal diagnosis of terminal illness, like cancer, in the stage of cancer, like in the stage of renal diseases, car crashing, and death of family members sometimes, or injured of multi-person in the family member, rape, death of a family member. So it is considered as an individual or as a private crisis. The second type, which is a public crisis, from its name, so private here it is toward individual, public, so it is affecting the community. So it might be a large community, so more commonly referred to disaster affecting the whole community or large group of people. So like terrorist attack. Terrorist attack, it might affect a huge number of people within the community. Or war. The existential crisis, which occur when a person questions the meaning of his own life. Why I am living? Whether he has a value, like midlife crisis. So, is my life? So he might ask himself the meaning of what's the meaning of the life. I am giving a valuable thing to other or to myself? Does the life worth? So this is the issue of existential crisis. Then environmental crisis which associated with a major changes in the ecosystem, such as the global warming. So it's affecting the whole world. Disease epidemic, like what's happened in case of COVID-19, when all the world was closed. Violence and eruption, wars, and severe economic depression. So those are environmental crises that also affect mainly the whole. Personal responses to crisis. In the personal responses to crisis, either it might be adaptive and it might be maladaptive. So take the adaptive, which is the positive thing. So if the person or the community are adaptive to the crisis, what will happen? So they are working through a crisis to strengthen people, coping responsibilities. So the coping responses, it will be raised as sense of self-efficiency. So it will raise that you are more efficient and you are able to provide something, you are able to care, you are able to give. So in this case, it is if you are able to adapt. In this case also, it is opportunity to learn a new coping skill and expand their support system. So the community or the individual or the family, they are expanding their support system, raise the level of function. So if it is adaptive, it is positive thing, if we are adaptive. If we are maladaptive, in this case, it results in developing acute or chronic psychiatric symptom, and it might be psychiatric illness. It will require professional treatment. So, crisis, it is always happened. Some people, they are adapt themselves and they will go through, they will get more experience, they will resist, they will fight, they will provide help for others. Some, they will sit and they will go toward the negative effect and toward psychiatric illness. A crisis intervention. In a crisis intervention, each person experience crisis is a unique to that person and the situation. So each person, he will go through the crisis in a different way than other. Intervention also strategies should fit each client preference, beliefs, values, individual circumstances. So whatever we are going to give an intervention for the client, it should suit all of those things. Intervention is time limited treatment. It has to be within 4 to 6 weeks. After that, he has to adapt, or the community or the individual or the family, they have to adapt and to recover from the crisis. The strategies are focused on the immediate problem solving. So immediate problem solving and strengthening of the personal resources of the client. So we have in our objective to focus on the immediate problem solving by strengthening the personal resources and the personal ability to go through that event. Now, we'll go to guideline for working with uncooperative client in the emergency department. So, in some cases, the client may not be cooperative with the health team in the emergency department. So, the stage, the environmental triggers, the first stage, stress response. The client, he has client behavior, the response to stress. The nursing action, we have to encourage the patient to ventilate, we have to listen to him, avoid challenges, because here we want to alleviate the stress on the person. So don't make it as a challenge for him. Speak calmly, clearly. Often you have to be a tentative listener. The second stage, which is escalation period, which is movement to loss of control. The client is losing his control over his behavior, or so in this case we have as a nurse or a healthcare professional to take control and maintain safe distance, because sometimes you don't know, he might attack you. We have to acknowledge also the patient behavior. Yes, he is having something strong that affects him, and because of that he is behaving like that. But we have to protect also ourselves. So we have to maintain distance, safe distance between us and the client. We have to give medication if appropriate. We can give sometimes tranquilizer or something that alleviate that stress on the patient. Remove to a quiet area. Sometimes we may show force if it is necessary, because we have to protect ourselves also from the patient behavior. In the crisis period, which is stage 3, emotional and physical discharge here. So apply external control, implement emergency protocol, which is initiated according to the emergency protocol which is there in the institution. Configurement and give focus in intensive care. So he is in need for intensive care. In recovery stage, which is the client will cool down. So in this case, he can listen. So we can reassure him, support him. No irritation. Encourage to discuss the behavior and alternative. What's the alternative? What he can do? What's other option? Release when in control. So and assess reaction to the environment. So we will see his reaction to the environment and what's happened. Conduct session for staff to process all area of the incident. Then the last stage, which is post-crisis and let down. Here, reconciliatory, which is demonstrate acceptance. Here, he accepts what's happened, while continue to clarification of the unit standard and experiences and expectation. So we have to orient to expectation. About the goal of crisis intervention, the we have many goals. One, the main goal for crisis intervention is to return to the previous level of function. So rehabilitate the client and to be able to do whatever he were able to do before, to the usual function. Stabilization of disaster symptom. This is the secondary goal. So in order to achieve those goals, we have to stabilize the disaster symptom that the patient is having, and the reduction of disaster symptom, first stabilizing them, then reducing them, then restoration of functional capability. After that, start with restoration of the client function, then referral for follow-up support, if it is needed. So those are the objectives that we have to follow, and those objectives, it is in order to achieve the main goal. The structure of crisis intervention strategies. In step 1, we have to do assessment. In assessment, assessing the lethality, which is the capacity of the condition to cause death or serious harm or serious damage on the patient and his mental status. So we have to assess how much that condition or event affecting that client and how much it is dangerous on the patient psychological or health care. Step 2, establish rapport and engage with your client. So we have to start the relationship with our client. We have to introduce ourselves to him. We have to make the relationship according to the steps of the therapeutic communication that we got during the previous sessions. Step 3, identify the major problem that the client is having. What kind of problem? Is it health problem? Is it financial problem? Is it psychological problem? We have to identify what kind of problem that he is having. Exploring alternative option and partial solution. So we have to see what we can do, how we can help, what other either we can fragment our objective in order to give or to show that there are some improvement. Step 4, developing a realistic action plan. So the action plan, it has to be realistic, that it can be applied, it can be applicable, and within our hand, from all kind of what that means, from the financial, from the health issue, from the treatment, from kind of support that we can provide. Implementation, developing an action plan also, and reasonable goal. We have to give the reasonable goals that it can be achieved. Then with the step 7, which is evaluation. In this case, we have to develop termination and follow-up protocol. So termination at the end, it will go toward like termination of the relationship, and how we can either follow up or refer him to other institution to do the follow-up. About Berger's Robert and stress crisis trauma continuum, he divided it to 7 categories. The first level and second level, which is the somatic distress and crisis, transitional stress crisis. So here, the action that we can do, we have to brief the crisis intervention, and the primary outpatient can be in the outpatient mental health care treatment. In level 3, which is traumatic stress crisis, in the action here, traumatic and group crisis orientation therapy. So it is by doing group therapy. Family crisis, level 4, individual or couple or family therapy, in this case, is needed. Case management and the crisis intervention focus with forensic interventions, sometimes forensic medicine. Level 4, mentally ill person in crisis. In this case, crisis intervention, psychopharmacology is needed, so you need treatment, psychiatric treatment. Case and medication monitoring also. We have to monitor the case and monitor the response to medication that's given. Day treatment and community support is needed. State level 6, psychiatric emergency. In psychiatric emergency crisis, stabilization it is needed. So we have to stabilize the condition of the patient. Outpatient treatment is needed, or inpatient hospitalization sometime, and legal intervention might be needed. Level 7, catastrophic or traumatic stress crisis, here application of multi-level crisis or trauma intervention is needed. All also previously listed intervention strategies is needed in this case. Anyway, so we come to the crisis. The crisis, it is a turning point. It is any event that is expected to lead to unstable and dangerous situation. So unstable and dangerous situation affecting the individual, can affect the individual, the group, community, or the whole society. Crisis deemed to be negative changes, it will give negative changes to security of the people. So in case of crisis, the people might not be secured, like less of security it will be there in case of sometime earthquake, in case of war, which is a panic or in a huge number of people are affected, huge destruction is there, so insecurity will be there, economic status also it will be affected, politically, so it will affect the politically of the country, also social effect, and environmental also affect, or affairs it will be affected, especially when they occur abruptly, when they occur without any warning, with a little or no warning. So more loosely, it is a term meaning of a testing time or an emergency event. So a crisis refers to a sudden unplanned event. So it is a sudden unplanned event which causes a major disruption or disturbance in the organization and trigger a feeling of fear. So all organization within the family or within the community, it will be affected, and it is threatened amongst the employee. So it is threatening for all. Intervention for initiation of family response to crisis for anxiety, shock, and fear. Here, what in case of anxiety, shock, or fear in case of after the crisis happened, we have to give information. That is, the information it should be within brief and concise, explicit, not hidden, and concrete. It does give only one meaning. It should not be a hidden meaning under that. Repeat the information and frequently reinforce it. Encourage family to record important facts in writing. So we have to encourage them to write the facts. Determine comprehension by asking family to repeat back what information they have been given, in order to see if they are concentrating with us or not, if they understand what we are talking and what we are in instruction is given to them or not. Also provide for and encourage to allow expression of feeling. We have to encourage them to express their feeling, even if that feeling is extreme. Maintain constant anxious presence in the face of the highly anxious family. We have to maintain constant when they are feel that they are anxious. Inform family as to potential range of behavior and feeling that are within the norm of the crisis. So their behavior should be within the norm of the crisis. Maximize control within hospital environment. It has to be if possible. Remorse and guilt. One here, don't try to rationalize the guilt for the families. Don't give rationalization for their feeling of guilt. Listen and support their expression. You have to listen to them. They, in these cases, they want someone to listen to them. Listen for their expression of feeling and verbalization. And then examine. I can understand how or why you are behaving like this. I can understand your feeling. But it might feel that, and however, what we can do, even though if, but we have to take an action. Follow the, however, with a careful reality orientation, with the real thing, and the statement or question. So it might be followed with a question for evaluation, and it might be followed with giving them what is the reality, what is heaven, that is heaven, and it is the reality, how we can deal with it. Grief and depression. So we have to acknowledge the family grief and depression. Everyone, when certain thing, bad thing happen to them, they will feel the grief, they will feel depressed, but it has to be within a limited period of time. Encourage them to precise about, and give grief and depression a context. Allow the family to appropriate time for grief. So it has to be within a limited time. Recognize that this is an essential step for the future adaptation. Yes, they can cry sometimes, they can express their feeling, but it should not be continued for their whole life. Whatever lost, it will. We have to compensate, we cannot return it back. Remain sensitive to your unfinished business, and also hence comfort and discomfort with the family grieving. So we have to be sensitive with them. Other classification also of crisis, we have what we call it private crisis, affect individual, families, but not the community at large, such as suicide, terminal diagnosis. I think this slide we public crisis. This is we repeated. It's repeated like for the second time. Public crisis and existential crisis and environmental crisis. Disaster management and healthcare setting. In 2006, Joint Committee added a new standard for the coordination or volunteer healthcare professional in the emergency situation. In case of a crisis, usually there are some voluntary work which is needed. But now in that voluntary work, it has to be within institution, it has to be also under control. So committee committees should be there, and it should be through those committees. Developing disaster plan and implementing practices for that disaster plan. Provide also standard design for facilitating organized responses effort among the volunteer. So the responses, it should be also organized in emergencies, disaster relief, and public health crisis, in order not to avoid duplication and to avoid gaps in giving care for the person. So it has to be organized in order to avoid that some people are getting more support and other they are neglected, and it is not intentionally, but because if it is unplanned, it will happen. So when we are organized the effort, in this case, the effort it can be distributed to all who are involved in the crisis, and everyone can get support. Community response button. In community response button for disaster, we have what we horrific phase. In horrific phase, shock of the disaster, it will put the people together, emergency medical team, also neighborhood, friend, around, and also survive offering emotional support and bringing supply needed for the recovery. So in this case, when any crisis happen, the people around, they will feel that crisis on that people. So in this case, the shock of the disaster, it will pull the people who are not affected in order to react. So there will be what we call it the honey. So in this case, everyone is trying to do his best, or in order to save or recover the others, or to secure the people who are affected, or to get them from the effect. Then the other, or to save them, then we will come to the honeymoon phase. In the honeymoon phase, community pull together. So the community will pull together, and outside resources also they are getting. Sometimes if it is for the a city or for the country, they will get and out support from other cities or from other country, are brought in last up to 6 months after the disaster. So everyone is trying to give support and to give help, establishing an infrastructure support, because sometimes the infrastructure might be affected, especially in case of flood, in case of war, in case of earthquake. So immediate need of the population related to water, sanitation, food supply, also insect control and disease control, all of those needed, it will be they will try to supply it to those people, and they might get sometime more than the need, and then especially in the first period of time. Then this settlement phase, in this case, the initial emergency responses and feeling start to subside. It will be decreased because it took a long period of time. So those who help for a period and pay their effort for a period of time, they cannot continue with that same level of effort. So feeling state of subside, people begin to realize the exact of their loss and limitation of what they can provide, of external support, and survives can be experiences anger, those survival who remain after the crisis. They might become anger and bitterness for the loss of support. So the support, it will decline. So the support in a honeymoon here, they are getting support from everybody, everyone, outside, inside, but that it cannot be continued for the whole life. It might be for 6 months, then after that it will decline. When it is declined, they will feel that the loss, they will feel that they are in need for many things, but it cannot be provided. So their feeling of experiencing anger, it might be there. The fourth phase, which is reconstruction phase. In the reconstruction phase here, survivors begin to take the primary responsibility. So the survivors who remain after the disaster, they have to take the responsibility here for rebuilding their life. So they have to rebuild their life. So here, from the start, everyone, they feel, they try to support, provide the need for securing those people and the need for supporting them. Then that support, it will be decreased. They have to take over by their own self. So ongoing support is required as survivors learn to cope with the new roles and responsibility. So that event, it will give them a new role and responsibilities that they have to do it because of that, in order to survive. Citizen responses and citizen corps programs, strategies that can provide community volunteer with program to develop emergency and first aid skill. So those volunteers also, we can train them to how to save the people and how to help them. Families emergency also preparing readiness plan should be updated annually. For crisis, is this expected? It is expected for individual, it is expected for family, it is expected for any country. So their community, they have, and the family, and they have to have some emergency plan to be ready in case of something happen. What we can do? What's the plan? What's the hoping that nothing will happen, but we have to have, it might any time we are expected in our life to have some kind of crisis. So what we can do if some kind of crisis is happening? There should be a committees for the community, and in most countries there are super committee that include people from all sectors, and it is a cooperative effort. So in crisis that's happened in a community, it is not one ministry effort, it is not an individual effort, it has an organized effort that it has to be with a control of the community. It has to control all aspects of life, controlling of the basic need, the infrastructure, the health need, the first aid, food, shelter, all of those things, it has to be planned. And also security. Security is an important, because in case of war, in case of earthquake, in case of that massive destruction, there might be some arise of negative bond that might be happened by from some of the people. So security is a need. Helping children to cope with trauma. Children are affected sometimes. They might be many children who are saved after the disaster, but without families sometimes. So children do not have the same resources when coping with a traumatic event as an adult do. So they have a special care. We have to have a special care for them. Parents need to provide children with opportunities both to take about crisis and asking questions. Maybe most of us we are not dealing with that. Children need to reassure that they are that they and the people that are important for them are safe, and also after the disaster, especially if they were attending or seeing or viewing those events, they have to be a rehabilitation program should be there. Helping children cope with the trauma. Give your children extra attention, particularly at the bedtime and other time of separation, if this is an issue for them, because sometimes they will imagine what's happened and what they say, and they will not be able to sleep, so they might need someone to be with them to help them in sleep and to support them to feel that they are supported. Talk about your feeling in an appropriate way with your children or with the children, and allow them to talk about themselves. Allow your children also plenty of time to play and enjoy recreational activities such as sport, particularly favorite game and activities with best and family and friend, if the remaining people from their families, because here it is type of treatment that we are shifting the concentration from the crisis and the loss to the other to the activities that they are doing. Make sure your child get enough rest and sleep, and also nutrition. Help your child physically relax, get warm bath, massage, story time, and lots of kids can help to relieve muscle tension. Intervene or and actively make your child upset or anxious. So we have to intervene if anything is making them upset. For example, television show that remind the child with the trauma or promote the feeling of worry, alarm, or the fear. Do not be afraid to switch off the television if the program content is not supporting the child recovery. So if you feel that the program is not supporting the child recovery, in this case, do not hesitate either to change the channel or to close the program. Proactive plan include identifying support network that can be used in emergency situation. So we have to have a plan and support network that can be used in emergency. All the adult with disabilities also should wear a tag or a bracelet to identify their disability. Keeping eyeglasses, hearing aids, and assistive devices near those people if they are near. Develop written list of medication and time of medication and the dose to that list of medication should be with them, with any special direction for that patient. Identify physician or social support or any person that can be contact in case of emergency for those people. So a crisis, it might happen in crisis also. Usually there will be a call center for help, and immediately they will open, the committee will resume, and there are continuous meeting for the committees, for the highest authority committee, and all sectors. It should be under the control of the higher authority committee in the country or in the city or in that area, and everything it should be through them. Voluntary work also it should be through them, and call center it should be there to help people and answer their question and see their request in order to alleviate their tension, in order to decrease their anxiety, in order to help them to cope with the crisis event and what's happened to them during that time and how to come out from that situation. Thank you for listening.